Today we're going to talk about 3 tips for filming a corporate interview with one light. So we're going to be replicating some of these lighting setups that I've used on my past corporate shoots, and there are a few things that you want to make sure to pay attention to when you're setting up this lighting setup. So the first of your 3 tips is going to be to use a diffuser. Whenever you're filming an interview with light, there are 2 types of lights you can have, hard light and soft light. If you don't have a diffuser, it's most likely going to be hard light. This is the light that you might see that comes from the sun, and it tends to have hard shadows, can be a bit more rigid, and tends to give off the impression of power. However, for corporate interviews, you want to focus on soft light. Soft light is very pleasing to the skin, it doesn't have any hard shadows, and overall it feels a bit more welcoming and inviting than hard light. The main way to get soft light is by using a diffuser. So in this case, we'll be using a 46-inch Octabox. However, you can use any type of softbox that you can find. We recommend getting the biggest possible softbox because the bigger it is, the softer the light will be. Lights that are far away tend to be harder, have more shadows, and that's why if you look at the sun, because it's so far away, the lights that it casts are typically very, very hard. Here are a few examples of the light on a subject with and without the softbox. You can see that when the softbox isn't there, there's a lot more contrast between the dark and the lighter tones in the skin, and overall it's definitely not as pleasing as whenever the softbox is on. Here you can see that it's a lot softer, the roll-off between the dark and the light is a lot more smooth, and it just comes across a bit more pleasing, bright, and upbeat. Now this leads us to our second point, which is to make the light as big as possible. Now we can't change the size of the light, but we can move it closer to the subject so that the light is filling more of the frame. If your light is 10 feet away from the person you're interviewing and it has a diffuser on it, it'll still come across as a hard light because it's so far away. So we want to get that as close to the subject as possible. A good tip for this is to set up your frame with your camera and then look on the back of your screen. Once you have your framing set up, get the light as close to your subject's face as possible without it being in the frame. This ensures that the light wraps around the subject's face and gives a nice roll-off between the dark and the light shadows. So far, the first tip we have is to put a diffuser on the light, and the second tip is to bring the light as close as possible. Both of these options achieve making the light super soft and making it pleasing on the subject's skin. For the final tip, it has to do with the placement of the light. We don't want to put the light to the side or behind the subject because that achieves a dramatic result with a lot of shadows. We want to have as little shadow as possible to achieve the corporate feel of bright, inviting, and happy. We do this by putting the light directly in front or 45 degrees to either side of the subject. This ensures that there are not as many shadows on the face and it is evenly lit. For reference, this is what putting the light on the side or behind would achieve. Now a bonus tip for you is to not shoot with a window behind your subject. Video lights are very powerful, but they are not near as powerful as the sun. So what happens is, because the sun is a more powerful light behind your subject, you get more of a backlight. Backlight can be very good for dramatic or cinematic looks, but it can also leave your video looking very unsaturated and with little contrast. For corporate videos, this doesn't look professional and can sometimes give across the feeling that it was shot on an old phone or old camera if it wasn't intentionally used. So there you go, there are your 3 tips and a bonus tip for setting up your corporate or bright interview with one light. Now I know there are a lot of nuances to interview lighting setups. Typically I use 3 lights when I do my interviews, but the most important one to me is my key light, which is my main light. So as long as you guys have that one set up correctly, you can achieve great and professional looking videos.